It started with a dare. My best friend Eric was always the reckless one, and when he found an old newspaper clipping about an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, he saw it as an invitation. The article was from decades ago, detailing strange occurrences, walls that wept an unknown substance, whispers in the dead of night, and the disappearance of the last known owners. No one had lived there since. The mansion sat in complete isolation, hidden behind gnarled trees and overgrown vines, a relic of a forgotten era. We arrived just before sunset. The place loomed before us, its towering structure draped in shadows. The gate, rusted and barely hanging on its hinges, creaked as we pushed it open. The driveway was cracked, weeds bursting through the stone, leading up to the house, which looked almost too intact for something abandoned. The windows were grimy, yet I felt like something was staring from the other side. "This place is seriously messed up," I muttered. But Eric just grinned. "That's the point," he said, stepping onto the porch. Each step groaned under his weight. "We're just going to take a look. Nothing crazy." The front door was already slightly open. It shouldn't have been. A musty, damp smell hit me as soon as we stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy, like stepping into a forgotten tomb. Dust coated the floor, but there were patches where it had been disturbed, footprints leading deeper inside. Someone had been here. Maybe still was. The grand foyer stretched upward into darkness, a massive chandelier hanging like a corpse from the ceiling. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing rotted wood beneath. An old staircase curled to the second floor, its banister carved with intricate patterns of ivy and roses, now blackened with decay. "Creepy as hell," Eric whispered. I turned my flashlight on, sweeping it across the walls. That's when I saw it. A stain. A wet dark streak running down the wallpaper like something had been crying. "Eric," I called, my voice lower than I intended. "The walls. They're wet." He walked over, running a hand across the stain before pulling away sharply. His fingers were slick, a dark, reddish-brown liquid clinging to his skin. "Dude," he breathed, This isn't water." I felt my stomach twist. Blood, or something pretending to be blood. A sound echoed through the mansion, a soft, shuddering sob. It came from upstairs. Eric and I froze. The sound was unmistakable. Someone, or something, was crying upstairs. It wasn't just a distant echo, or the house settling. It was real, raw, and filled with sorrow. A woman's sob, soft but persistent, weaving through the silence like a whisper in the dark. Eric's face paled, but he forced a grin. "Creepy audio effects, maybe. Someone trying to scare trespassers?" I didn't respond. My chest tightened as I turned my flashlight toward the staircase. The crying continued, steady, as if the house itself was mourning. Eric, reckless as ever, started up the steps. They groaned under his weight, dust shifting with each movement. I followed, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The second floor stretched out into darkness, a long hallway lined with doors, each slightly open as if someone had peeked out and left them ajar. The sobbing was louder here, but it wasn't coming from any specific direction. It was everywhere, as if the very walls were weeping. Then I saw it. The wallpaper, the same one we had seen downstairs, was soaked. Long streaks of dark liquid seeped from the ceiling, trailing down in jagged lines. The air smelled metallic, damp, rotten. I touched the wall. It was cold, almost alive. The wetness clung to my skin, thick and sticky. "This place is seriously messed up," Eric muttered, shaking his head. I think we should. A loud thud cut him off. One of the doors at the far end of the hall slammed shut on its own. We both spun toward it. The crying had stopped. The silence that followed was worse, thick, suffocating, as if the house was holding its breath. Eric, because he never knew when to back down, took a step forward. Hello? His voice was steady, but I knew he wasn't as fearless as he pretended to be. Is someone here? No answer. I grabbed his arm. Eric, let's just go now. But before he could respond, something moved. A shadow, shifting just beyond the door. Not a trick of the light, not dust swirling in the air. It was a figure, tall, hunched, lurking. The door creaked open, just an inch. A single pale hand emerged from the darkness inside. And then, the sobbing started again. Louder, closer, as if it was right behind us. Eric and I stumbled back. My breath caught in my throat. The pale hand remained in the doorway, unmoving. The sobbing grew louder, but it wasn't coming from the figure. It was the house itself. The very walls seemed to tremble with sorrow, the dark liquid seeping faster, dripping onto the floor like tears from the ceiling. Eric, despite every warning screaming in my head, took a step closer. Who are you? His voice was quieter this time, less confident. The figure moved. Not forward, not backward, just shifted, like it was unraveling. The hand twisted in an unnatural way, the fingers elongating, twitching, as if trying to grasp something just out of reach. I wanted to run, to drag Eric down the stairs and never look back, but my feet wouldn't move. And then, a voice, not from the figure, from the walls. Help me. A whisper, faint and broken, seeping from the very structure of the house. It came from everywhere, above us, below us, from inside the walls themselves. Eric turned to me, his eyes wide. Did you hear that? I barely nodded. My throat was dry, my hands clammy. The door at the end of the hallway, the one the figure had stood behind, suddenly creaked open a little more. Inside was darkness, a void. My flashlight barely pierced the heavy blackness within. The crying had stopped again, replaced by something worse. Breathing. Shallow, raspy breathing, coming from deep inside the room, and then the smell hit us. Rot, decay, something long dead but never truly gone. Eric gagged, covering his nose. Jesus, what the hell is that? I didn't answer. I was staring at the walls. The liquid, whatever it was changing, thickening, darkening. The faint brownish-red smear had deepened into something richer, more sinister. Blood. And it wasn't just dripping anymore. It was moving. Flowing, letters began to form on the wallpaper, scrawled by unseen hands. A message, a warning. Don't let it out. I grabbed Eric's arm, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to leave now. But before we could move, the figure inside the room lunged. Not walking, not running. It slid forward, impossibly fast, a blurred shape of pale limbs and empty eyes. And the door, every door, slammed shut at once. The slam of the doors sent a shock wave through my chest. The air around us turned thick, suffocating, as if the house itself had come alive. Eric's flashlight flickered, casting frantic shadows on the walls. But my own light remained fixed on the thing that had lunged at us. It stood just inside the doorway, its limbs grotesquely thin, its face stretched into something that resembled a human but wasn't. The eyes, empty hollow pits, locked onto us, and from its throat came a sound that sent ice through my veins. A laugh, or maybe a sob, or both, twisted into something that didn't belong in this world. I grabbed Eric's wrist, yanking him toward the stairs. Run! We bolted, our feet pounding against the rotting wood as the house trembled around us. The walls moaned, fresh streams of dark liquid pouring down, soaking the carpet, dripping from the ceiling like the house was bleeding from the inside out. Halfway down the stairs, the temperature dropped so suddenly that my breath came out in a white mist. The lights above flickered violently, and then darkness, pitch black. The only sound was our footsteps and the wet squelch of something moving behind us. Eric cursed, nearly tripping. I reached for the railing to steady myself, but my hand landed on something wet and pulsing. I yanked it back, bile rising in my throat. The walls weren't just weeping anymore. They were alive. A shriek erupted behind us. Inhuman, jagged, filled with rage. It rattled through my skull, made my knees buckle. I didn't dare look back. The front door was just ahead, open, wide, gaping, a sliver of moonlight spilling onto the rotting floor. Safety was within reach. And then the house pulled back. The floor beneath us shifted, stretching like something organic, as if the house itself didn't want us to leave. The doorway seemed to stretch farther away, the walls tightening like a throat closing in around us. Eric screamed as something grabbed him, an unseen force yanking him backward. I turned, blindly swinging my flashlight, and caught the briefest glimpse, pale fingers wrapped around his ankle, pulling him toward the stairs. No, no! I lunged, grabbing his arms, pulling against whatever force had him. His eyes were wide, panicked, his nails digging into my skin as he struggled. The whisper came again. Don't let it out. My stomach dropped. I understood now. The house wasn't the danger. It was the thing in the walls, the thing that had been trapped here for decades, maybe longer. The walls weren't weeping. They were sealing it inside, warning anyone who entered. And now, as the house trembled and bled around us, it was trying to escape, and Eric was its way out. I had a choice. Let go, or let it free. Tears blurred my vision as Eric screamed my name. My grip faltered. The force pulling him was impossibly strong. The house was begging me. Don't let it out. I let go. Eric was yanked into the darkness, his scream cutting off in an instant. The house exhaled. The walls seemed to sigh, the liquid seeping back into the wood, the temperature rising again. The pressure that had held me in place released. The front door was right there. I stumbled forward, my legs shaking. As I stepped through the threshold, the house behind me groaned, louder than before. The door slammed shut with a final echoing boom. And then, silence. I stood outside, gasping for breath, staring at the mansion as the last of the dark stains vanished into the wood. The windows, once open like watching eyes, were now black and lifeless. Eric was gone. The house had taken him. Or maybe it had saved us all.